Jack it up.
Our Pledge of Allegiance person.
Yes. Today, we are honored to have Officer Brandon Walker lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You can come up, Brandon. Just yesterday, Officer Walker was recognized by Governor Kehoe in Jefferson City during the Salute to Heroes event, a testament to his dedication, leadership, and impact on our community. Just briefly, if I could, I know we're all standing, but I do want to just talk about a little about that recognition that you had yesterday at the state capitol. Growing up, Officer Walker dreamed of playing professional football in the NFL, but life had different plans, ones that would a career of service and impact. After graduating from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale with dual degrees in secondary education and social work, along with a minor in history, Brandon began his professional journey as an educator. He taught American history and coached high school football, mentoring students both in the classroom and on the field. Driven by passion for helping at-risk youth, Brandon transitioned to a role as a juvenile detention officer, where he gained invaluable insight into the challenges facing young people in his community. And it was during this time that he discovered his true calling, becoming a police officer, to make a lasting difference in the lives of family and youth in Kansas City, Missouri. And for the past 11 years, Officer Walker has served with the Kansas City Police Department, excelling in various roles and earning more than 34 commendations and awards. Currently, he serves as a recruiter in the employment unit, which I will touch on in my remarks, where he dedicates his efforts to educating the community about career opportunities within the department. He's a respected leader, and we know leadership isn't a rank. He's a respected leader both within and beyond the department, and Officer Walker serves on multiple executive boards throughout Kansas City. Guided by his faith and the belief that education begins at home, he empowers Kansas City youth to embrace education and hard work as pathways to achieving their dreams. So today we're proud to honor Officer Walker and his remarkable contributions by inviting him to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Brandon. We appreciate you. Okay, invocation is done by Chaplain Bill Gorman. Thank you.
I want you to bow your heads as we open this meeting in prayer. Father in heaven, we are grateful this morning for the gift of a new year, and we ask as we begin this new year as a city, as a police department, that you would watch over our officers, that you would protect them, that you would give leaders of this department wisdom and insight. Watch over all of them, give the board wisdom as it leads. We pray for peace in our city. We pray for protection and flourishing of all lives here. And we all offer all of these prayers in your name. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Yeah, we got an empty chair for a moment.
Okay, we have some guest presentations today. We have pay for the professional staff. Shelley Baker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Town. I'm the consulting manager with our classification and compensation team at Baker Tilly. I'm able to provide you with the results of our comprehensive classification and compensation study for the professional staff for the Kansas City Police Department. I want to walk you through our 5 phases that we worked through as part of this process over the last year. It started with project initiation, where we did a very large data collection effort, had on-site communication meetings in April of last year, and then asked everyone in the organization to participate in what we call position analysis questionnaires, where they get to tell us in their own words about the work that they're doing for the organization and for the department. Those PAQs are then routed to supervisors for review. They're critical and important as they form the basis of our study. From there, we moved into our job evaluation system where we evaluate every single professional position using a set of compensable factors. There's the same 9 compensable factors for every single position. It's based off of the position, not the person in the role. This is about establishing internal equity for the organization. We also did a full complete FLSA review, reviewing which positions were eligible for overtime. From there, we moved into our market assessment where we partnered with the organization to identify a list of public peer organizations, as well as then the 3 published salary sources that represent the market or who you're in competition for talent with the Kansas City Police Department. All 116 positions of the professional staff were included in the market. We did make some adjustments to the data as it comes back in, something like work week or a geographic cost of adjustment. But most importantly, we don't weight the data, so no one peer is given preference. We do a law of averages. And the results of market. These are the 16 organizations that were identified to be included in the study, and then we have those 3 published salary sources. We're able to collect and compile data from 15 of those. Kansas Bureau of Investigation was unable to participate, but we are able to obtain data from 18 sources. We were also able to obtain market values for 92.9% of the benchmark positions, very strong market data here to be able to understand how these positions have moved or changed in market. Based on those market results, Kansas City Police Department as of last year was 10.4% below market at the minimum, 2.6% above market at the midpoint, and 9.5% above market at the maximum. Falling behind in being able to offer competitive starting salaries and draw talent into the organization, but very competitive at the higher end of the spectrum, being able to have competitive values at the maximum. Considering this, we needed to make some adjustments to your existing pay structures. So we look at your existing pay structure, did an analysis, as well as then developed a brand new implementation, as well as a brand new pay structure. This was the proposed pay plan and what was eventually adopted and implemented. It is a hybrid system, which means there is a combination of steps as well as open range systems. Steps for our entry-level positions, open from minimum to maximum. You can see grades 59 through 63 is open for our management positions. Employee salaries could fall somewhere between those minimums and maximums, being competitive and flexible for our management level positions, but giving a steady progression and predictability for those entry-level professional staff. It is the same consistent 8.17% between each of the steps grades, as well as then a set percent increase between each step that is predictable of 5.75%. Now, once we have the pay structure built, we actually look at grade assignments, placing the position in the correct spot based off of internal equity and market competitiveness. We looked at career progressions. We looked at supervisor-subordinate separation. We looked at grade compression, making sure that every position was internally equitable and market competitive. Again, this is about the position, not the person in the role. So we're not looking at the person in the position, their length of service, their performance, even their existing salary. This is about establishing where the position is valued for the organization. Once that was complete, we do look at our implementation. We prepared 4 different implementation scenarios for the organization to adopt. In each of these scenarios, no employee would receive a pay decrease as a result of the study. So this was ensuring that no individual would receive a pay decrease as a result of the implementation. Implementation costs were based on base pay only, not inclusive of benefits or any kind of pay differentials. Of the 520 staff that were included in the study, which does include 2 vacant positions, 176 employees, or 33.8% of the employees, have a salary that fell below their new range. 343 employees, or 66% of the workforce, had a salary that falls within that new range. So no scenario moved employees beyond the maximum or that step O. We wanted to make sure that everybody was able to stay within the proposed pay structure. Based on those scenarios, KCPD chose to implement the following option. For the step structure, again, this is a hybrid structure where we have step and open ranges. For the steps, employees would move to the step based on their years in position. If they have 4 years in their position, they would move to step 4. This is capped at 7 years in the position or capped at step O. And then for the open range, we do an application of starting at the minimum and then 4% per year in their position. Again, an application based off of tenure or how long somebody has been in their role. 4% per year in their position, capped at 7 years. To do this, we then looked at all the employees, all 526 staff that were as part of this pay structure, and placed them on the appropriate step or provided them with an appropriate salary adjustment. And then our final phase was just to wrap everything up in a nice neat bow called the final report, where we document our full methodology, the results of the market, our findings, our recommendations. We're conducting final presentations with you all, but also with staff this afternoon and tomorrow. So they will also be able to understand what we did and how we did it and arrived at our recommendations. All project documentation has been turned over to the HR team. That's inclusive of every single PAQ that we collected as part of the study, as well as the market results. And then we're providing HR with the ongoing training that they need to maintain the system moving forward. And that is our full class and comp study. I'm happy to take any questions you all have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for that, and it's very thorough. Did you say the methodology here is to try and meet the midpoint of market across all the steps and grades?
You could say that. So one of the aspects that we look at is midpoint is key. Midpoint represents when somebody is fully proficient in their role. When somebody is fully proficient, they should be paid at or near the midpoint or the market value for the position. We also want to ensure that minimums are competitive. The results of market showed that your minimums were not competitive. They were significantly below market. So while we want to be able to draw talent into the organization, we also don't want you to become a training ground to where you train them up and then they leave for another organization. So while we look at midpoint, we also look at minimums as well as the maximums when designing pay structures.
So your recommendation is go to 11 steps, and that's changed from what?
From 14.
So the two strategies would be increase the lower steps to be attractive for talent acquisition, but then compress the steps to retain when we get toward the top end.
That's correct. So that's exactly what we did, is we wanted to make sure that we didn't compress the top end of the pay scale. We actually just maintained your current positioning as opposed to not taking money away from employees and out-earning their potential. So we froze the top end of the pay structure, but we did remove the first 3 steps to bring those minimums in to be competitive with market.
And then as you reach that top step, what happens after that? You've got tenure, you're at that top step. Is there an evaluation relative to where the market is at that time?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and actually, because that's a function of your existing pay policies, and that will still function as normal. So what happens when there's step up?
I'm Marcus Smith. I have the Human Resources Division. Yeah, that's one of the things that we're looking at in terms of managing the pay program over the long term. One of the things that we saw is that when we give increases to top out, it starts to draw a larger and larger emphasis on that last step, and we start to lose some of that market positioning. And so what we're looking at doing, and we're in conversations with our fiscal division, what we're looking at doing is offering a longevity incentive, which would be a one-time payment to members that are already at that top out position, so that we're not continuing to work that program outside of being in alignment with the market, but still compensating and retaining members who are at this top step.
Maybe back on, just if I can go down a small rabbit hole here, just help us understand the gradients in the steps. You used a 5.75 grade to grade, and then an 8.17%. I'm sorry, that's on the steps, and then on the grade, 8.17%.
That's correct.
What does that relate to? Help us understand that.
So what we look at when looking at those midpoint differentials, or the distance between each grade at the midpoint, is that alignment to market. So we take a look at the overall market values for the positions and determine the line of best fit. We run everything through a regression model, not because I'm a giant data nerd and love regressions, but because it's actually a very useful tool to be able to design and determine what should the distance between each grade be based off of those midpoints. So that's how we determine it. It's not pulled out of a hat or it's not random. It's based off of the regression analysis and that alignment to market. Midpoint is key, and then we look at the number of steps and the percentage between steps to ensure that minimums are competitive, but we're also then freezing and holding your maximums to be where they're at in their current position as well. Yeah, that's how those midpoints are determined. The percentage between each step is just a function of where we need those minimums to be competitive based off of the number of steps.
And then of the 116 positions, the job descriptions then are allocated across those grades.
That's correct. So we actually use the employee-completed PAQs, the position analysis questionnaires, not existing job descriptions, but those PAQs as well as those supervisor comments to determine the internal equity and then place them on a position on the pay scale. So what the actual position should be assigned, what is that value based off of the internal equity and the market data. We use both to determine grade assignments.
I hope I don't have to repeat all those questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Absolutely. Any other questions that I can help answer?
Just a couple of questions. In the market assessment for peer organizations, for Greene County and Johnson County, Missouri and Kansas respectively, is this a compilation of the cities within those respective counties or just the sheriff's offices in those particular counties?
That's the county government, so inclusive of the sheriff's office, but if there are analogous positions that are similar to professional staff, we would look at the entire county government. Not the cities within those, but the actual county government themselves, which is inclusive of the sheriff's departments.
The reason I ask that is Overland Park, Kansas, and Springfield, Missouri might be considered competitive organizations for talent. So you would not be including those numbers in this analysis, correct?
That's correct. Overland Park was not considered as, well, it was considered as a peer, but it was not ultimately chosen as one of the 16 that we were looking at.
And then what would the overall cost of implementing this?
Yeah, so we looked at, again, when we look at the implementation, we have to look at it in two parts of the individual's salaries in relation to the new proposed minimums and maximums, as well as the steps. The total cost to implement the compensation study was approximately $2.5 million.
And that's been included in our submitted budget for 25.
Okay, great, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? That's it. Thank
so
you,
much.
great job.
I just want to acknowledge a lot of the work that's went into this study, and with our Administration Bureau and our Executive Services Bureau, looking at every employee from salaries to job descriptions. This is a long time coming for our professional staff. We've had decades of this almost like a matrix pay structure. So this is a welcome change, and it really is a long time coming. So thank you so much for all your work on this. And this is the modernized pay structure is really going to be beneficial for employees and also to recruit talent.
Yes, thank you. And you'll be available, you said, the next couple days to go through this, or?
I'm on site today, and I'm on site tomorrow morning to present to employees in kind of town hall environments. They'll get an opportunity to hear this as well. And employees can ask us any questions that they have as well about the study.
Great.
Yeah, that's another one of the efforts in rolling this out, is making sure that our employees understand where they fall on this new pay structure, how it affects them, and if there's any kind of questions or concerns, they have that opportunity to do that directly with our command staff and also Baker Tilly.
Perfect, thank you.
What is the effective? When do we start implementing?
That would be May 1.
May 1,
Mhm,
with the
in
new
the
fiscal
new
year.
budget fiscal year, yeah.
Great. Thank you, appreciate all your hard work. Okay, and now we have the mayor's designee.
Thank you, President Kramer. Yesterday, I happened to be at the inauguration of Governor Mike Kehoe. We wish him well. There were many members of the Kansas City Police Department there. I appreciated seeing them and seeing their service as well. Yesterday, however, also was the start date for the woman who holds the position Director of Public Safety in my office. So I actually am seeing her at work for the first time this week. As part of that, I decided not to make her present to you all today, but I would ask her, Lace Klein, to please stand up for us and let us all get to meet you. Lace Klein is a former assistant prosecutor. She has been in the private practice of law for several years. She came highly recommended by our current Jackson County prosecutor, by the way, and many others who said that she will do outstanding work working with the Kansas City Police Department, this Board of Police Commissioners, and others. She's a graduate of the University of Missouri-Columbia for both her undergraduate degree and her law degree. Welcome, Lace Klein, to the Board of Police Commissioners. We all look forward to working with you further.
Thank you, and welcome. And you know, you have big shoes to follow there, right?
And still very briefly, I want to thank Chief Graves. I know you've already met with Ms. Klein, keeping that collaboration with the city going on violence prevention efforts. One thing that I think was very strong about Prosecutor Johnson when she was in her prior role was how closely we worked together, particularly on violence prevention efforts. We plan for that to continue to work, of course, with the help of the prosecutor's office as well. So look forward to more good stuff there.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you, and thanks for making that happen. Okay, and now we have a special guest. Congratulations on your new appointment. I shouldn't say appointment, you were elected. And we really appreciate you. I loved working with you in the past, and we're really looking forward to this new year and working with you, our prosecutor, Melissa Johnson.
Thank you very much, President Kramer, members of the board. Hopefully these presentations will stop being so special because I have reached out and asked for a spot on every month's agenda for the Board of Police Commissioners meeting. Of course, you all get the city presentations and updates, but as we all know, the prosecutor's office is just as much of a partner, and so it is extremely important to me to provide updates, to exchange ideas for the public purview as well. And so with that, I have a couple of updates that I want to apprise. Letter to all of our chiefs of police and prosecutors on this morning, our municipal prosecutors, excuse me. Effective immediately, all drug distribution cases should be worked up and submitted to my office for charging. That is a slight deviation from my predecessor's policies, and so I want to make that abundantly clear. Whether there's a nexus to violence or not, please work up those drug distribution cases for our office so that we can evaluate and charge accordingly. In addition to that, our municipal presiding judge, Judge Courtney Wackel, who handles a lot of our domestic violence cases, has been very vocal about her opinion that too many domestic violence cases are handled at the municipal level and not the felony level, where cases involving strangulation, serious bodily injury, etc., are involved. I have also included in my policy change letter that was sent out this morning a set of characteristics for cases and notifying police officers when those cases should be submitted at the felony level to make sure that we are all on the same page and handling those accordingly. Property crimes has been at the forefront of a lot of our minds here recently and even prior to the unfortunate incidents that happened early Sunday morning. For everybody's awareness, we are working diligently to stand up a new property crimes prosecution division that will be staffed with attorneys but also law students to make sure we are expanding our capacity and are ready to jump on those cases as soon are submitted to our office. That is going to take some time because it's going to align with the law school calendar year. But in the interim, we do not have the luxury of waiting for that. And so we are working directly with different districts in Jackson County. Prosecutors are being assigned to those districts because the security guards at these districts who the frequent flyers are, and therefore exchanging that information in real time allows us to prioritize prosecution of those prolific offenders. Midtown KC Now is actually in the building. We have engaged in this work with them and will continue to do so, and we are starting this work with the Downtown Council next week, and we will be adding different districts according to crime hotspot data to make sure we are covering our hotspots all over the city. Last update that I have for everybody are our patrol liaisons. We are now having prosecutors assigned to all of the patrol divisions at KCPD. We had one vacancy that we needed to fill, and that was in South Patrol. And that vacancy is now full by Prosecutor Jonah Hall, who is an assistant prosecutor in our office. Unfortunately, he was not able to come with me this morning, but he is very, very excited. He is tied up with the training. And so we now have prosecutors assigned to all of our patrol divisions to make sure that that collaboration continues to happen in real time. And we will be assigning a prosecutor to the robbery unit and the new assault squad once that is established as well. And that is all that I had for you all this morning, and I'm available for any questions, should there be some.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you and your hard work, and it's already showing, so we appreciate just these changes that you've made. And it looks like the mayor had some questions, too.
I just want to start by commending you as a Jackson County and myself. These are incredibly positive changes. Having sat on this board for the last 5.5 years, I think there have often been questions as to how are yellow sheet determinations made. We have also heard presentations about policies from our prosecutors. I don't know if we've been able to engage that much with them. So I thank you tremendously in your first week and a half or so on the job for coming to us and this board. I guess I get to say what my policy views in the world are. I think the drug distribution change is a very additive and helpful one. I understand the theory and the logic behind these approaches. I think if you look at a number of our defendants' activity, this will be quite helpful. And frankly, you made in the policy change you're making on domestic violence is one of the most humane, important, and transformational things that I've heard in this jurisdiction for some time. There are many issues with detention in Kansas City and all the concerns. I think something that the City Council and I and our residents, frankly, astonished by is how many people who are very serious, otherwise should be violent offenders, who repeatedly abuse their families and loved ones, and who are being processed on ordinance violations. Thank you for making that change, and let us know the help you'll need in connection with that. I'll just keep going through. So I know you have to wait for the law school calendar on property prosecution support for extra law students, but you know Whitaker and I are active lawyers in Missouri. You could always point a special we may lose cases, so we'll let
You may want to start with the mayor.
list everyone, but you know, I'll be honest, whatever help you need from the bar, from all of us, from even assistant city prosecutors and beyond, do let us know as you build up those programs. We hear a lot from our communities, our businesses, our neighborhood organizations, our CIDs about property crime issues. Real prosecution. I am one who continues to believe that deterrence is a fundamental role of the criminal justice system. I think that does start to build some knowledge among defendants and others in our community that there are repercussions to property offenses in our jurisdiction. So thank you for all of that. I'll make one other point just briefly clear for the public on the importance of these prosecutor liaisons for each patrol division and certain other areas. In this board meeting and in many conversations, there's often a question about, well, will charges be filed, what charges should be filed, what can be prosecuted and what cannot. That is I've learned over the years, the chiefs helped teach me and others have, sometimes that can be a time-consuming discussion, because I will admit for the public's knowledge, sometimes I'll go and say, Chief, we just got to do this, this, and this. And she says, well, we work with other people. You know, we work with people and we work with our prosecutors. Making sure that we have people that our officers can almost immediately communicate with and engage with, say, we're seeing this pattern, we're seeing this problem. What do you have to do? What information, what evidence do you need to build that sort of thing that I think will pay dividends for this jurisdiction long term? So thank you for all of that. These are big changes, big important ones, and in mind, we'd love to see the memorandum as well. Feel free to share that with the entire board as well. Thank you so much.
We'll do.
I would like to make one more comment on the domestic violence. I know that touches so many people, and I really appreciate you and the judge working on this. And it doesn't discriminate. And it happened in my family. My niece was murdered. And, people just think it will never happen to you. And I just think it's important that we make a message and that we work together to stop it. So thank you. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And before I get out of the way, I do also want to make sure that it is abundantly clear if any a case is being handled at the municipal level, it should be at the felony level. Please reach out directly to me so we can handle accordingly. The more that we can talk, discuss, and troubleshoot in real, the better off we all will be. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, general discussion from our chief.
Good morning.
Morning.
I echo all of your comments with Melissa Johnson's new role as a Jackson prosecutor. I remember as a young officer in East Patrol and knowing who our prosecutor was, and just that prosecutor being there to just have any kind of discussion will be an absolute benefit for our property crimes detectives that are housed at our patrol division stations that we've seen even as of crimes involving property crimes. So happy New Year. So I want to get off on a positive start here, that while we continue to address crime and disorder for a safer, healthier city, and we also are working internally to improve the working environment for our members, I want to share some positive progress for the department. Positive progress that will enhance our ability to provide better service to Kansas City, to reduce gun violence, property crimes, capabilities in our 911 call center, and improve the quality of life for Kansas Cityans. So like I started, January has been an exciting month to start the year here at KCPD. This month, 4 new call takers successfully completed training and are answering 911 calls, with more in the process to join KCPD. And last year, we dramatically improved the success of call taker training and are continuing those efforts in 2025 because we need to improve our 911. 9 breakers made it off break-in and are out on their own as new police officers responding to calls for service. 17 entrant officers graduated the police academy last week and are in police cars with their field training officers. And I already sworn in 1 lateral transfer officer in January. I have another one scheduled later on this month. And as of this morning, for the first time since 2019, we currently have 40 entrant officers starting the police academy on January 27th. In 2019, the largest class had 45 entrant officers. This is the 4th largest class since 2007.
Great job.
I want to acknowledge all the efforts I'm doing recruiting for the Human Resources Division, where they're recruiting, employment processing, following up, going in places we've never been, working on the weekends, to make sure we are reaching out and bringing talent here to KCPD. And, Officer Brandon Walker is one of our recruiters. I think he's a shining example of all the great you do on our department, and just having someone in that position is so important. We also have Captain Pinkerton here today, who's also leading some of those efforts. There's a lot of process that goes into coming on to the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, but they make it look seamless, and they've also shortened that process from years prior. So I just wanted to give a little bit of progress update starting the new year. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those, or any other topics you would like to discuss.
Madam Chair, if I may briefly, because Lord knows I dish out the questions sometimes too, but I'm going to commend that absolutely exceptional number, and I think it needs to be amplified. You said the 4th largest class since 2007 of recruits. I mean, that, ladies and gentlemen, is not something that you are seeing in law enforcement around the country, particularly in major cities. You're frankly not seeing it in most hiring and everything else. And so that is exceptional work. You have not slacked on standards. You have not changed the types of things that people need to do to get here. And I'm glad you saved it for the presentation, because I'm actually both excited and surprised. Thought you'd say good stuff. We'd be like, all right, we're doing fine. That's huge. And that will make a very big difference for a lot of the things that myself, many people in Kansas City, you all have concerns with long-term for us. So I just actually wanted to say thank you, to everyone who is looking to find the people where they are and let them know that this is an honorable profession. It's one that is interesting, dynamic. You work with the gamut of good people here in Kansas City, maybe some that need some more love. But nonetheless, I appreciate you and thank you for that.
Great job. Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, Investigation Bureau, Deputy Chief Niemeyer.
Good morning. The Investigations Bureau's information is under tab A in your board book. I'd like to start off my presentation. I think this year you'll see a little different presentations from the Investigations Bureau. If you remember last year, I would highlight a unit, or we'd talk about whatever was the topic at the time. The Drug Enforcement Unit is going to be here today. Captain Lamport. We talked a lot last year about starting an overdose unit. This is the men who were in charge of that. And I think it's important to see the face behind the names that I talked about. They started this, we had the Drug Enforcement Administrative Unit already established, but we redirected them at the direction of Captain Lamport, and I'm gonna let them talk about what they did, what we're doing, and where we're going.
Good morning. My name's Jason Cramblett, and I'm the supervisor over the Drug Administration Unit. I'll just give you a kind of a brief overview of what our tasks are on a daily basis. Let's see. So currently I have 6 detectives assigned to the admin squad. One of our primary functions is we handle all of the possession cases drummed up by the district officers in the city. What that kind of entails is when the district officers arrest somebody either through a car check, call for service, and they are in possession of illegal substance, they call my detectives. That phone is answered 24/7. And then the next step is the detectives respond and do an in-custody interview of that suspect. Try to further the drug case, get some more information. Once they're done with that, they come back and compile an entire case file. Those case files are then submitted to the prosecuting attorneys for charging considerations. We've had great success with Jackson County in charging. It's good to hear that she's changed her drug policy. I think we're right on course with that already. The other responsibilities that we have is we review and get all the TIPS hotlines. Those are TIPS, private people call in, 474 TIPS, and they also do an online internet tip, if you will. So my detectives review all of those tips to try to further a drug investigation. Generally, those tips are very generic. They don't have specifics, but there are some that transpire into a good criminal case. Another good education, or another piece that we do is the educational presentation. It's more of a drug awareness. We have taken this presentation to schools. We've taken it to community groups at the request of specific community groups. It's an educational piece to recognize what drugs are. A lot of people don't know what crack looks like or fentanyl. So we get to show them what it actually looks like, the effects that it has on the body. And at the same time, we offer our CED folks are usually there with us, and they offer an outreach if somebody they know is having a substance abuse problem. We recently partnered up with, her name is Michelle Lane, and she is the Director of Critical Care at North Kansas City Hospital. She goes with us and teaches the effects of Narcan, how it affects the body, and she actually leaves doses of Narcan with the community group for a safety barrier, if you will. So she teaches that spot, and it's got really good response so far. We also respond to the overdoses. We'll talk about that here in a second. This next slide is our total cases that we work. You can see a little dip in 2023, and we contribute that to the legalization of recreational marijuana. In November of 22 is when the statute got passed, and then in February of 23 is when the first business opened up and was open for sales. But we are right back on pace now. I think we exceeded it by 1 or 2 or 3 from 2020. And that's just the increase in opioid use. Oh, right. So we respond to 2 different things. We do the overdoses, both fatal and non-fatal. The non-fatal, how we get those is when the patrol officer goes out on a call for service with an ambulance, or they come across somebody that's suffering an overdose, they complete a casualty report. Those casualty reports come to us, and we assign those to a detective. The responsibilities of that detective is to reach out to that person if they can, either through telephone, residence check, and then we also send an informative letter out to that person. Main goal is just to check on that person, see if they're doing good, see if they have the reach or the outreach to go into rehab if that's what they choose. And also we're trying to get a little more information on the drugs that are out there on the street so we can do that investigation. The overdose responses with death is handled by missing persons, but we go out with them and work that together. What we're trying to do is further that drug investigation and ultimately put that drug dealer who gave that person their last dose to try to do a criminal case on that. And so far we've had great success with that with Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. The other part of the overdoses, our major sits on the review board that's ran by the City Health Department. So he has a voice in that also. And then we also input all of our stats into the national overdose map that is ran by HIDA. And then you can see on the next slide, so that's where we ended up for 2024. We had a total of 319 reported, and it had a total fatality rate of 158. I know it was quick and brief, just kind of a quick snapshot of everything. Is there any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead.
Sorry to be so chatty today, but I guess it's my full-time job to listen to all this stuff. Thank you for this. This is, I mean, that last number you have is why we do what we do. I thank you tremendously for the outreach. I just want to commend you and your colleagues for a few different things. I was up at North Kansas City Hospital with some of the folks that are working in that area. They talked about working closely with this department to make sure we could get information to young people. That's very helpful. I think giving people, including those who have used, ample opportunity to know that first there's a way out, that frankly the folks that are sometimes aren't necessarily good folks is important for us, and it's the only way that we get our way around this crisis. And so I certainly hope the prosecutor's new approach is going to be incredibly helpful in getting these drugs off the streets. And ultimately, for anybody who ever tries to tell us anything about drug enforcement, good or bad, or what have you, it's this number behind me as the reason why you do what you do. 158 people aren't alive in this city today, many of them young people, because of the things that are being pushed in our community. So really thank you for the work, whatever help we can give on the informative side, on the marketing side. I used to be cool and know what people wanted to talk about. Now I don't know what they get. I'm not on the right things, I guess, but we're here for you to help as much as we can from the city side.
Appreciate that.
Really appreciate the closer look at this. Started talking a lot about fentanyl and the trend sweeping this country. Is that still the case, or are you seeing any other trends that are on the horizon?
Fentanyl's on the rise. We're seeing that. It's just they're starting to mix the drugs together to keep that high. So they're mixing fentanyl with the cocaine just to try to numb it and keep that high. That's the main problem we're seeing right now.
In the distribution side or on the user side? Just got both.
Okay.
And Sergeant Cramlett, can you also just let the board know how fentanyl is also being, mixed in with other drugs, and the user doesn't always necessarily know that it contains fentanyl? Can you just give a little brief info?
Yeah, just like the chief said. So they used to cut cocaine with baking soda, powder, anything they could that was cheap, because then they could double the profits with the cocaine. So now they're cutting the cocaine with the fentanyl, which if you don't know it's fentanyl and you're not used to it, that's going to kill you. Now you can draw a resistance on fentanyl and have a lot of it in your system if you're used to it. We see that a lot when people go to rehab for 6 months and then fall off the wagon, if you will, and then think that they can do the same dose they did before, and that's fatal.
And sometimes it's even masked as pills of what looks like a prescription pill.
Yeah, and that's part of our educational piece that we teach the community groups in the schools is a blue pill just is not what it seems to be. They mix it with anything and everything.
I spoke on a panel last year about fentanyl, and there were parents who had lost either their young adult or even their teenager, and a lot of instances it was their usage of what they thought was a prescription drug that was, obviously used in an inappropriate way, but of an illegal or a prescription, and it was actually contained fentanyl to look like a prescription pill. I think some of those who have died of an overdose didn't necessarily even know they were ingesting fentanyl.
And that's part of the educational piece we really hammer on is the identification. And if you don't know what it is, don't trust it. And then we give them steps to who to call and what to do if they see that. It's just nobody knows what it is anymore.
And along those lines, even lacing marijuana with fentanyl?
Yes.
So, I mean, they're just...
Nothing's untouched.
Wow.
So thank you for your report. That's a huge caseload for one sergeant and 6 detectives, it feels like, just the numbers. As I listened to you, I questioned if we have an understanding of the impact of drug enforcement on the reduction in violent crime. Are there, I would think there are some parallels there. Any findings in your efforts regarding impact on trafficking enforcement? Of course, every life is critical and overdoses are critical, but the people who get those drugs into our community, right, and then get them to the folks who are selling them, and then those ties to violent crime, are there any consistencies between those two?
Oh, I think there is, yeah. The hardest part that we have as investigators when we talk to our OD victims or our possession folks, the suspects, is getting them to tell us who they got the drugs from. Because they know at some point in time they're going to go back to them. That's the hardest part.
But to answer your question, even coming up in this organization, Doug, you could chime in on this, just coming up and through the years, I remember when crack cocaine was big here in Kansas City, there was a lot of violence associated with that drug coming into our city. You still see homicides that involve narcotic sales, robberies of individuals who thought that they were coming to exchange drugs for money. There is absolutely violence involved in narcotics.
So before they wrap up their, I thought this was important because I knew that number was going to come at the end, and we'll talk a little bit. Presentations are overwhelmed by violent crime. We talk about it every day. We've talked about it in the city for years. 158, we had 144 homicides last year. And that should be known. Like the mayor said, we lost 158 people to overdose. We lost 144 to murder. So it is important. It's taken us a while to get this going. We started this in January of last year. And one of the other real reasons I wanted you to be able to see these folks that are working on this is one, he gets upset with me because usually whenever you've seen me start at the end of that table, or some of you have, and I've worked my way down to this end of the table, but Captain Lamport over there was the person even a year ago that redid our entire hiring process. He was the one whenever we were in ABO that we're starting to get people hired in 30 days. Now I know Captain Pinkerton has taken it on from there, and but he's done a heck of a job of going places and taking what he has and making the best of what he has with the amount of people that he has to get results. So part of that is to tell him a good job too, Captain Lamport. So I appreciate him.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate Alicia coming this morning and talking about that. Our prosecutor had a meeting with myself and Major Kobanaw about this and filing drug cases and how important that is. And so I'm very happy that she came and talked to the board this morning and stated that, because it falls right in line. I did not know she was coming this morning to discuss that. And it falls right in line because here, Sergeant Cramless detectives are the groups that can be filing those cases with her prosecutor. So I thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
So this is the blue sheet for, as of this morning. But I'd like to go back to 2024. It's a blue sheet. I think Pam Bear passed that out to you guys this morning, as well as the current blue sheet. But in 2024, we ended with 144 homicides, and that was compared to 182 that we had in 2023. That's a 21% decrease over the previous year. In 2024, we cleared 86 homicides, 23 of those homicides from previous years, for a total of 109 cases. I think the important thing to talk about is that equates to a 76% clearance rate. That is the number that I focus on with my bureau, the detectives. The national average for clearance rate of homicide is 57.8%. This year's clearance rate at 76% is the highest clearance rate we've had in over 10 years. It's been climbing. Last year we finished at 73%, and years before that we were down in the upper 50s and 60%. So when we talk about, a lot of times to kind of get in front of the questions of the board, we'll ask, well, what caused the number to go from 182 to 144? And I always say it's everybody must do their own part, whether that's the police department, whether that's the community, whether that's individuals themselves, but what can the Investigations Bureau do? I look at that clearance rate because that is our job. Homicide happens, we respond, those detectives respond, and what is your clearance rate? And I like to commend them for having a 76% clearance rate, because that means 76% of those cases somebody was held accountable. In December, we had 8 homicides. 5 of those 8 cases had identified suspects. 3 were cleared by arrest, 2 were solved but not cleared, and 3 are still under investigation. If we break those down by division, as we always do, Center Zone had 0, Metro had 4, East had 2, North Patrol had 0, South Patrol had 2, and Shoal Creek Patrol Division had 0. Our non-fatal shooting comparison report for the end of the year. January 1 to December the 31st, we finished with 572 non-fatal shooting victims. In 2023, we had 511 in that same time period. We were up for a total of 12% compared to last year. In December, we had 28 non-fatal shooting victims and 34 as compared to 34 non-fatal shooting victims in 2023, which is an 18% decrease. What I'd like the board to recognize here is if you look at the year-long stats, we discussed it starting in February when we had the tragic events that happened in February of last year, and we were at times 40, 50% higher in non-fatal shootings. So those last 3 months, we were down 33%, 22%, and 18%, which is a trend that we would like to see continue, and has continued into January. As you can see, as of today, or as of the 9th, we had 11 in 2024 as compared to 8, so we're down 27% at this point in time from last year. A unit that I haven't talked about in the last year, but I think it's important that people understand and know. We talk about work and how much work is divided amongst detectives and where that goes. Our homicide unit also has a division which is missing persons. That unit works days, PM shifts, and then we have a general squad that comes in at night. They're not only responsible for missing persons, but they are also responsible for other death investigations, which are natural deaths, suspicious deaths, or suicides. In Kansas City last year, we had 1,026 death investigations. Those could be, you know, again, if someone passes, that group goes out and handles that investigation. They also took 957 missing person reports between missing persons and runaway juveniles, with a 96% recovery rate at the end of the year. And before I take questions, I would like to highlight a couple of items that I specifically put in your board book, and the notable events for this past year with Investigations Bureau. And one of those is our forensic computer crime section. In 2024, KCPD's forensic computer crime section, also known as our RCFL that the mayor has mentioned before, completed forensic exams on 580 criminal cases. And I'm going to speak way over Doug Niemeyer's head right here. 1 petabyte of digital data was processed during those exams, which is equivalent to 1,024 terabytes. You will have to ask someone else. Please do not ask me what that means. However, to me, in my terms, there is no FBI-governed RCFL in the country that has ever processed 1 petabyte of data in a calendar year, and that was completed by our RCFL. So kudos to them. And then right below that, I'd like to, I know we're going to talk about property crimes here shortly, either at the end of my presentation or at the end of Joe's presentation as it goes between both of our bureaus. But I would like you to notice that I talked about property crimes starting in January of last year. I talk about them almost every month of the things that have gone on. And we have submitted on a specific suspect. There are 18 cases on one suspect that included 19 different burglaries to the prosecutor's office for consideration of felony charges. Those cases span from 2022 to 2023 and in early 2024. The detective will also be submitting cases on this suspect to Clay County Prosecutor's Office for consideration of additional felony charges. That suspect is in custody, is in Kansas, and is appearing before a judge over there prior to our charges. So we have these cases, multiple burglary cases, and we'll discuss the cases from just this past weekend. But whenever you have a person that commits a property crime, if every person on the board, the 5 of you, were all property crimes victims, we may be able to prove these two. We have to prove prosecutable cases. We can prove these 2, but in our minds, we know that they're involved in these 3 as well. So sometimes you'll get charges on 2 when in reality, we know they've committed the 5, but we have to have a prosecutable case. We have to have evidence to prove that. So I want to put that up front. And many times it comes in cases like the one that I'm highlighting here today, where we have 18 cases over the course of time that we were able to finally put those other ones together on that suspect. So, and lastly, before I take questions, is in the month of December, every property crimes unit, all 6 divisions, completed a project in December for, the one that was highlighted was in Metro Patrol Division with Ward Parkway Mall to cut down on the shopliftings, thefts from autos, and worked with Patrol and the tactical response team. I think Joe's going to talk about that, so I won't say too much about it, but every division had a special project to cut down on property crimes in the month of December. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, can I follow up on a couple of things? I know we're going to get to property crimes because that's fresh and happening and affects people personally, but go back to the non-fatal shootings, the 144 homicides, 76% is remarkable. And so that really needs to be highlighted. As I sit and shoot reviews from time to time, I am impressed with the of collaboration that this department has with other agencies and even within the department. I'm leading up to my question, ultimately. So I just want to make sure that that's recognized, because that's a lot of hard work and it doesn't go unnoticed. But that also, I think, tells us that we're getting cooperation from the public because that's where the evidence comes from. And so that I would like for you to maybe respond to or give us a little bit more on that, because the 76% is a lot of hard work, but I think it's also because we're getting evidence from people who are more willing to come forward. Fair?
Yes, sir. You know, I would like to say, and I always say, you know, investigating a homicide today is way different than it was in 2001, 2002, when Joe and I were there. We have people that are on a block. Let's just say you come to shoot review, you've seen it. How many times do we have video of a crime happening? That's the biggest change I see now from 20 years ago. We have Ring doorbells, we have cameras, we have city cameras, we have department cameras, we have surveillance cameras for businesses, and people will call and say, hey, I have this information. So it is huge. We could never get to a 76% clearance rate if it wasn't collaborative. Like I said, the police department doesn't take credit for the number that goes down, because we are not the sole reason that the homicide rate has gone down or the clearance rate has gone up. It is the work with the police department, it's the work with the community, it's work with the city, it's everything. So I appreciate everything that's been done in this last year within the Investigations Bureau, and also with, as the mayor just said, you know, I look forward to working with the city, and Melissa was in that position, coming to shoot review, to be able to collaborate with our citizens and different organizations. So you are correct, sir.
Yeah.
It is true that if a police department community, you will get more cooperation. Also, if those who have been affected by violence or a victim of a crime know that they're know and see that person is being held accountable, that also feeds back in and reinforces the community to continue to come forward and provide information to get to that result. There are several investigations that we've had over this past year, over the past 2 years. I mean, all throughout our careers, but especially over this past year, that were if it not were from the community providing information, we wouldn't have solved the case. We need each other, and we all have to work together. But even this specifically, I remember in Sean Brady's case, like that information coming out right away from people who had witnessed that tragedy, that each one of those participating people that see, that's why we say if anybody saw or heard anything called the TIPS hotline, it's those contacts that sometimes that little bit of information or that small bit of what someone saw can solve a case. And so that absolutely is a reflection of trust in the police department too, or the criminal justice system.
Thank you for that. Okay, then the last half of that is what you ended on, and that's the focus on property crimes. And I applaud you for bringing that to our attention. I think almost every board meeting, and I think you've impressed us with that can be the start of more serious crimes later on. So focus on the property crimes now so that we can perhaps prevent more serious crimes later. Throughout last year, we saw, I think it was in the River Market, we saw then an uptick in Crossroads downtown and then the Brookside Waldo, and now we've got another uptick this last week. Any commonality there, or is this just more random and happened to happen over this last weekend?
Well, I think it, when you say commonality, I mean, it's the same type of crime, right? They're breaking in a window, going in, looking for a safe, looking for cash, quick cash, and getting out of a business quickly. What I will say about the patterns that you just discussed, we started discussing in the middle of last year the high-end vehicle thefts that were happening. We ran a project with patrol. Those suspects were identified, those suspects were arrested, and those suspects were charged. The River Market example, again, pattern, suspect identified, suspect arrested, suspect charged. Same with in the Waldo area. That suspect identified, I mean, it took us a while. We identified him. He actually ended up being shot. He was shot by an individual out south, not the police department. And when that occurred, he was arrested, he was charged. We know who he is. So each one of those that you talk about, we've identified the suspect and they are in custody. And then we have a new pattern, right? It happened. We're working with KCK as we speak on leads for this one that happened this weekend. So same type of crime, different people.
Different people.
Different people.
But what's common in different people is oftentimes those that we do identify, submit charges for are prolific offenders. I mean, some of them are, there's certain names that we discuss even in shoot review, and then we have teams afterwards where you can mention a name, and, those of us who've been on for a little bit may have recognized that name as someone who has been involved in previous property crimes, since that's the subject we're talking about. So I will say that is something that's common. It's not just in our city. It's in a lot of American cities where we're, even if someone has been charged and in the criminal justice has even done some time, come out and reoffend. It's very disheartening for law enforcement when we continue to arrest the same individuals over and over and again. But we're working on that. That's why our relationship with our prosecutor is so important, and that's why we have a prosecutor liaison, Major Kobanaw, and we staff all of these cases together, and we really have a great response. It's really, really good.
I will tell you, all those cases that we just discussed, the River Market, Waldo area, all of them had been previously arrested. All of them were previously arrested for property crime.
And typically, when they're previously arrested, how long are they held for property crime?
It just varies. It depends on, that's not up to us.
Right.
Obviously, so
Right.
it can vary all over the place.
I may briefly hop in. I think when the chief describes them as a prolific offender, they've actually been arrested so many times, you can't actually just note that there's one sentence. And prolific offenders are often, not like 5, it is 30, 40, types of offenses. And you get, to the chief's point, in this city and others, folks who just have a propensity to doing that in the same way that you show up to work every day. They are professional thieves or what have you, and have done a lot of that over time. And so that, I think, is sometimes the challenge we face.
So just to be clear, all last year it was about vehicles and break-ins and high-end vehicles. So are we saying the folks who are doing that are the people who are smashing and grabbing at small businesses, or there's a commonality, or is there a crossover from one type of personal property theft to another? Or are these different rings of people?
Yes. I mean, they're different groups. They're different groups, same crime. So we identified the folks that were with the vehicles. We've identified the folks that were in the River Market area. We identified the folks in the Waldo area. And, just this past weekend, we had the events that occurred this past weekend, and we are on top of that as well. What I stated earlier, a lot of times, and the point I was trying to make earlier is, you have one group and they're going to commit several crimes. We, as a police department, will arrest that person. We will identify you and we will arrest you. But I need a prosecutable case as well, so I may be able to file charges on these 2 cases because I don't have enough evidence to prove that you committed these other 3. It doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to work towards that, but we're charged on these 2 for now, and then continue to work towards that because the method of operation is exactly the same.
Are we finding that these folks are going across county? You mentioned KCK.
County, state, that's why we're working with Kansas. The person I talked about that we're filing, we have 18 cases that we're trying to charge in Jackson County is currently locked up in Kansas. And going in front of a judge, I don't know the exact date, but has a court date in Kansas for the crimes that they committed out there. So The pattern, the person who we ended up identifying in the Waldo pattern was actually shot in South Patrol.
Also, if I could just add on to that, like the example that Deputy Chief Niemeyer gave of one of the projects worked in Metro with some of our prolific shoplifters. We will oftentimes work with our regional partners on that, because usually if someone is hitting a beauty store, sometimes like, different types of department stores, they'll go from city to city, and sometimes it'll be an all-day situation where there'll be many stores hit in various different, basically like the regional Kansas City area, like you could say Overland Park, Kansas City, Kansas. So we do work closely with our regional partners in that. So sometimes it's just a Kansas City pattern, and sometimes it's grown even past that. Sometimes we'll even have, we've had in the past, I don't say it's common, but folks that come in from other parts of the United States and have their own type of crime that they travel to commit. I don't want to give a gloomy picture, but obviously we are in the crime and disorder business, so.
I ask the question because you hear the conversation, we talk to our neighbors, we talk to our friends, and the conversation is always about, why aren't you PD doing something about that? And as the conversation here has evolved, I mean, these are perpetrators these are criminals who just, it's a matter of not so much, I won't say preventing it, but being able to quickly, as you are, investigating to find out who it is. I don't know, I think there's just conversation about, so how do you avoid it? How do you prevent it? And I don't know if that's not an easy answer, is it? Especially if you have individuals going from state to state, county to county, city to city.
I think Deputy Chief Maven's gonna get into some of the prevention stuff. That's why I was like, we'll probably get to that after
Okay.
you hear both
Yeah.
of our sides, because I think he'll answer a lot of those questions.
Okay.
We do have responses and influences on prevention, and even something that our community interaction officers provide is CEPTES, where that's that environmental design where we can go out to your business and help you make your business either a harder target or stronger to reduce some of the contributing factors that would make your business look like it would be easier to break into than someone else's, so to speak. Yeah, I will pass that on to you, sorry. You have a lot on that.
Well, I look forward to that. I just know at some point, we have to get into the conversation that's happening in the communities, right? And that is happening, how is it happening? How can we apprehend them? And so I look forward to the report from Deputy Chief Maven as well on how do you prevent it? How do you avoid it? How environments more, if you can't prevent it, at least you can, the environmental component of having the cameras in place so that you could possibly apprehend them quicker, so.
Absolutely, and we've talked over the last 6 months of how the police department has increased patrols. Our reinstituted the entertainment plan to make sure that we have more officers down in and around the downtown corridor. At one point, we even extended the hours to go later, and then the crimes that happened over the weekend were even further outside of those hours that we had officers. So looking at that, officers' presence in those types of situations does make a difference in adding the extra patrol. And again, I don't want to talk about what you're going to talk about, but we've definitely stepped up our efforts here to make sure that we address those crimes.
I can speak to it now, just since we're discussing it. Some of the, Doug spoke to some of the things Investigations Bureau is doing in response to property crimes, but specifically for the Patrol Bureau, like the chief mentioned, we're deploying additional officers from other divisions into Central Patrol Division, which encompasses, downtown, Crossroads, River Market area, for targeted patrol to address property crimes. Their mission is to conduct high visibility patrol and look for folks who are committing crimes or exhibiting suspicious behaviors around closed businesses. But they also will respond to any kind of priority 1 or 2 incidents that happen. effective Sunday, this Sunday coming up, we're going to have a new proactive squad of 1 sergeant, 6 officers. And their mission is going to be to perform, again, high visibility patrol, but also targeted patrol in hot spots areas. And so, like for instance, where we have the incidents that happened over the weekend, we can redeploy that squad, and they'll be working all kind of different shifts depending on when the crime is occurring, especially evening and night shifts. Every Wednesday, we mentioned a Teams meeting where it's similar to CompStat, but stands for Teamwork to Evaluate and Analyze Management Strategies. But it's our upper command staff and patrol commanders and investigations. And we talk about common indicators and crimes and suspects and patterns, and then help deploy resources after that meeting. And then we'll do a follow-up the meeting thereafter. And so constantly, I'm sharing information in my bureau with Doug's bureau and vice versa. We're working together. We mentioned earlier the downtown footbeat officers and SEPTEDs. So they'll go around and contact the businesses and provide some survey and some recommendations on how to make them a less attractive target or to harden their premises against property crime. And our tactical response team, they work closely with Doug's property crimes detectives. So once they identify suspects, they're out the very next day going to take those individuals into custody. And then lastly, I'll mention, we just had 7 officers who completed, we had 19 officers who just completed break-in, but 7 of those officers going to be assigned to CPD effective January 19, provide additional boots on the ground to respond to these incidents.
Thank you. Sorry I kind of pushed forward your great news, but that is wonderful strategy, and patrol and investigations working so closely together. So thank you for kind of going out of order to kind of add color to what Deputy Chief Niemeyer was sharing. So thank you so much. I just had to highlight it because it's, this is public forum and folks are listening. They kind of need to understand the strategy. So thank you for articulating those.
Madam Chair, I have a few questions in this area of property crimes broadly, and you're both a great tag team in taking all of them. But briefly, to make sure I don't get too far ahead, talk to us a little bit about the Ward Parkway Mall issue. And I understand you might have a slide, but we don't need it. Imagine it's not working. And what was the work there? Because you mentioned that as kind of a prevention model,
Right.
Working with the business.
So obviously around the holidays and throughout the year, really, malls and certain businesses will have prolific shoplifters who come in, grab armloads of product, run out the stores. So what we did there is responded in a covert manner, contacted the stores, got their cooperation, and we just set up to look for indicators or anybody who's trying to leave the store and shoplift. And then we had our tactical response team standing by to effect the arrest. And so just in that one operation, we arrested 5 suspects and then charged them all with stealing. And so we had other incidents like that throughout the different divisions where we're partnering for property crimes over the past month.
And that sounds like an exceptional solution to at least what we've seen publicly. Folks who run in, steal a bunch of stuff, right, end up in, kind of where the employee sometimes is either fighting them or not, but, avoids that. So thank you for that, because I've seen a lot of that on particularly news in other cities, and I don't want to see a preponderance of those issues here, although I understand we have them. Something I think Deputy Chief Niemeyer noted on property crimes, and I appreciate it, is actually how we have progressed in violent crimes. So if we all went back 2 or 3 years, we were sitting on a homicide record of a few years ago, then another one, and we were saying, all right, what are we going to do? Fairness, at the time, there were many in the public who said, to Commissioner Romanus's point, you're not doing anything, you're not doing enough, and what have you. And everybody started meeting to say, all right, we're going to work hard on our shoot reviews. We're going to make sure that we're working together on prevention. We're going to bring everybody into the room. It's going to be that broad area. And I think it's clear that in property crimes, we're building that focus now, and we need even more of that focus. A few things that, I'll start with this question for you. On these high volume crimes, property crimes, vehicular thefts. You know, what can you do broadly? And I know you've talked about going to individual businesses and helping people, probably reminding people to lock their car doors, that sort of thing. But I know part of it's catching people. And I have a later question that you may not be able to answer, but how long can you keep them even if you get a conviction and all of that? But what can we do more broadly to address those? Is it just we need officer volume to match the volume of offenses? Is it a camera and super big lighting everywhere and we're living under Big Brother? What's the kind of the most efficient way, knowing no one's got the magic wand on it?
Well, I'd say, I mean, you touched on several. Having additional officers on the streets is very important. The technology piece is super important. We find that sometimes, you know, we'll go to these businesses afterwards, and we really encourage them to have an adequate surveillance system, because once we can do that, you know, we can link the individual with several different crimes, and, you know, they might, obviously they have much more impact when we put several cases on an individual instead of just one. And how do we link them? Oftentimes it's through the video evidence from the surveillance cameras. But just with Prosecutor Johnson, that's going to be a great partnership working together for us to say, you know, we can get there in this case if you give us this. You know, we'd have to have that collaboration back and forth. And so I'm excited to see what kind of programs she has, you know, in store.
You could probably touch on this. I know the city implemented something. I'll give you the example. This weekend, one of the businesses has cameras. They're antiquated. By the time we got there, it was already taped back over. The evidence that we needed was gone. By the time they got there, it was gone. So my understanding is the city has something in place that will help these businesses, if I'm not mistaken, and you might be able to expand on that. And we expand on that with these businesses when we go there, as Mabin just said. You know, if they had the technology that matched today's times, we probably would be able to take that video surveillance, match it with the video surveillance with KCK or the other video surveillances, and that's how you may not have physical evidence to say it, but I got a video that shows this person wearing this clothes, which means that's the same person, and I do have evidence in this case. Now I can match that up, and instead of filing one burglary charge, I'm filing 4. So I know you have I know the city, and not you particularly, but the city put in place a system for security for these small businesses.
What's going on with defendants right now? So when we have the drug conversation, I think your officers helpfully explained the incentives, at least, that they have on fentanyl. There's a ton of money they can make, and now they're cutting everything with it and getting people extra addicted. It's heinous and subhuman, in my opinion, but nonetheless, at least I understand the rationale. Why do we think we are seeing, you know, this kind of level of increase now, since there were still some bad people in this city 5 years ago and all those sorts of things, but it does seem like we're in a kind of more of a crisis point now.
About the fentanyl crisis?
More on the property crimes crisis, so yeah.
Overall property crimes are actually down.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, and I've said this my entire career, perception is not that it's down. So the reality is, in people's mind, it is an issue. It is an issue. All crime's an issue. I wish I spent most of my career in violent crime. I wish I never had to go to another homicide, ever. But the perception right now about property crimes is that we're having these incidents, and they're much larger than they were last year, when in reality, reported, I can only go off of what is reported to the police department, but those are down slightly. So I think your statement is they're increasing. The reality is the numbers don't show that, but the perception is that they are. And we still need to work towards where we have none.
How can we get, I mean, I'm a person who comes up with crazy ideas and solutions sometimes, some good, some awful, most of which don't get me in trouble. There's part of me, and it's good the lawyer stepped out, that says, well, you know, we here in the Board of Police Commissioners have the role of I believe, approving all private security licenses, armed and unarmed. And I want them to be more consistent in how they're giving you information and kind of if they're writing or have an ability to write things for you. If I could wave a magic wand, I would require every business in Kansas City to use the same private security licensing firm, so at least we get some economies of scale and all of that. So instead of 10 different operators in the city market who know what happened in one shop and they're responding to that while somebody else got broken into 2 houses down, we actually built that consistency. I assume I can't do that, but I'll work on it, and Mr. Kenner, I guess, will tell us what we can do. But nonetheless, I mean, does private security work well with you too? Is when we talk about a lot of these 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. issues, you know, I'll hear from that say, well, yeah, we hired somebody to cruise around, whether good or bad, nobody really knows. We're trying to get eyes and ears out there, but it just doesn't seem to be enough. What's the best way, I think, for them to spend, and the taxpayers help fund that too. Sometimes we support, actually, we all fundamentally support community improvement districts as we pay a surcharge all our shopping. What's probably the most efficient thing we can say to them in connection with their private security investments too, so it's effective to help arrest offenders and ultimately bring cases?
I hate to give my opinion on what about their private security and their what they choose to spend their money on.
Just to interrupt you briefly, I know them, to your point, would say, no, y'all should do it, right, and handle it all. But recognize that if they're already in that area, how can they be most effective?
Sure, we work closely, and I'll only say my own experiences. You know, I worked at East Patrol a lot of my career, and we worked closely with the Independence Avenue Court. All of those folks that worked private security up there, they all the same. They knew who. All those security officers knew the folks on the street that were committing as officers. So they were a tremendous help because we overlapped with one another. We ran into each other every day. My officers ran into folks every day. So I would give someone my opinion on that. I'd say follow what they did on the Avenue.
Also,
This may be more of a question for our separate county prosecutors, but I assume part of how we end up with prolific offenders is because if they continue to commit a number of offenses, although they become at a certain point, but if there is not violence necessarily, so if you break into your place, I'm not a judge, but nonetheless, I sentencing them more related sometimes to the nature of the offense, sometimes perhaps rather than the persistent or prior offender level and what have you. You know, this is where I'm torn, and this is where it's more on you, so maybe I'll make this a statement and less of a question. As we think about our advocacy, you know, some jurisdictions have done strikes laws, some have done others. Typically, in criminal law, you do aggravate penalties over time if someone has committed to committing certain antisocial behavior. And I would love, and maybe this is a conversation we have with our prosecutor colleagues, our judges, if they're willing to talk to us at some point, but is to see where you have those same people doing bad things again and again. They really do need to sit down. And I would make this comparison to drug offenses, and I think we saw a good example today. And I can be as sympathetic as anyone. Oftentimes when we talk about drug offenses, there are some very good human beings in our city and all around this country who think that it's just us arresting a 16-year-old who's smoking pot or used to be smoking pot, right? Your fentanyl trafficker or distributor is a very different defendant and person. And I think in property crimes, the law sometimes thinks about it as, oh, there's shoplifter, let's use the same theoretical 16-year-old stealing a candy bar and that sort of thing, or someone else like that. And it's really not that person. It is instead people that I think are often terrorizing businesses and others in this city. I think part of the reason, to Colonel Niemeyer's point, while the total number hasn't increased, you see them hitting certain areas because I think they often will steal other people's ideas and will say, I know this part of the city. I had a buddy who was able, or I know of someone who was able to get off with this much in goods or something like that, and there's no real cost to them. And so I would hope that as we look at the recommendations on sentencing, again, this is something where we'll talk to the prosecutor and her assistant prosecutors, we are seeing those who have a high number of offenses, even if not having certain other aggravating circumstances, they are dealt with in a way that does look to the criminal justice system goal of deterrence of past activity. I thank you for paying attention to this. I mean, to the extent that we can have presence, and I know some of that officer presence is in numbers, and so that is something we continue to address. That news at the beginning was important. I think that's key. If there's a way we can make it seem like we're a lot more present without having numbers, and I don't know if that's lights all the way, all the time on cars like you'd see in DC, if it's cameras. I mean, I don't want to live in what they'd call a police state. I know in the city of St. Louis, they have cameras and lights in certain downtown intersections now. If you drive through on a weekend night, you know, those are all tough things. I know if you go to Brooklyn today, even though they're selling $10 million condos, all the places have the metal sheds over glass windows. I don't want us to get to that. But I will continue to push you all, and I think you all are doing it, for the most creative solutions we can have today for the problems we face, knowing that we will work long-term to try to address all of them. I appreciate the changes that are being made, particularly in the evening hours, dog watch, and all that, and we'll look forward to hearing about more. Thank you for the time.
Just to finish, Commissioner Whitaker asked me this before, and Major Coleman all printed it out for me today, but you asked about cameras, and if people go on our website and log on, you can go to Watch KC as far as your cameras are and register your camera at the police department. It's this is just the printout from it, but anybody can go on there, log on, say, I have a camera, it's in this location. That way, if there is a crime committed, we know where to go. So you'd asked me that question a few months ago. I thought it might be a topic today. And then lastly, tomorrow is our shoot review, and I'd like to say we only have two cases at shoot review tomorrow. So it hopefully will be a quick meeting tomorrow.
That's a very good thing.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else, Deputy Niemeyer? Was that all? Okay.
Took my fair share of time.
And I just want to say, because I know in 2023, our clearance rate was around 50%, which was still, it was 50-something above the national average.
2023?
Yeah.
We were 70. 2023, we were at 70, just above 72. In 2022, we were at 58.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking 2022, because I know we've continuously have beat the national average, but today, I really want to say you guys have done a great job at keeping that going and, you know, presenting those cases and getting those clearance rates. So I know you all work really hard, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask just one other question kind of in the property crimes realm, assuming we're hitting it all now? Typically, the way that we learn about them is a call goes out. District officers are typically responding to that. At what point do detectives get involved in property crimes, if any, and just kind of how you laid it out with drugs? I would love to know how we investigate our property crimes issues. Sorry. Yep.
Middle of that. So how do we get involved in the property crimes? Well, obviously, there's a call for service. Patrol officer goes out, recognizes that there's been a crime committed, and then they call if it's Center Zone, they call Center Zone property crimes. If it's North Patrol, they call North Patrol property crimes. But once the investigation begins, as in each of these major patterns that we have talked about, our property crimes unit, led by Captain Schreiber, we can pull all of our property crimes detectives to a certain part of the city to work on a pattern. It's not just that station alone. we can bring in, just like Joe does with his patrol officers, we do the same thing with those detectives and bring those detectives to a certain zone to help out. They not only investigate it, but they go out proactively. Let's say all day they investigate crime. That evening, they will go out proactively and do their own proactive work to try to identify someone in conjunction, let's say with the tactical response team, because they've identified a suspect. They set up an area, look for that suspect, and then have the enforcement side come in and do it.
Got it. Yeah, that
Does
helps.
that make sense? So they're play two roles as a property crimes detective. They're notified by patrol, then they're proactively searching or trying to, and we also, there's something else that just popped in my head. We try to keep an eye on people who are, as the chief said, prolific offenders. Where are they at? And what are they doing in neighborhoods? Because eventually, we have seen in the past that those prolific offenders are going to pop up somewhere, and then a pattern's going to begin. So that's a really quick of what our property crimes detectives do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Deputy Chief Maben, anything else? I think we've kind of picked your brain, but I want to make sure.
Morning again. So I'll begin by highlighting some notable events from the past reporting period. Then I'll share some end-of-the-year stats from our tactical response teams, the median response time report, and then I'll conclude with a end-of-the-year traffic division report. And we already kind of discussed this, talked about our Metro Patrol Division officers in TRT, along with property crimes and the retail theft project at Ward Parkway, so we can move on from there. North Patrol Division partnered with 2 target locations in the Northland for a Cram a Cruiser event. They parked a patrol vehicle at the store, and people filled the cruiser with a new donated toy. Each location filled up their police cruisers twice in 3 hours, and some of the items were delivered to the Salvation Army for their Christmas toy event. And then North Patrol officers were given the rest of the toys to hand out to families in need as they responded to calls for service. South Patrol Division and the Community Engagement Division held the 2nd annual Coats and Cocoa event in the South Patrol campus. CED social service specialists gathered donations of new and gently used coats from various businesses, service providers, churches, and community members. Several of these organizations also held activities for community members to participate in while they picked out their new coat. About 800 community members were in attendance, with 710 coats given out. The Police Athletic League had a total of 543 visits and 9 new enrollments during the month of December. The daily average number of visits was 66. PAL's total attendance for 2024 was 15,746. That's almost 3,000 more visits than 2023, and about a 23% increase year over year. On December 4th, PAL hosted its first panel discussion on youth violence prevention. The panel included speakers from CED and the Gang Intelligence Unit. The department members were also joined by some of our community partners. Discussion topics included root causes of crime and strategies that the kids can use to avoid being involved in crime. The Community Action Network, or CAN officers, partnered with Parks and Rec for a Toys for Tots Christmas party hosted by the Westside CAN Center. Over 300 kids received new toys for the Christmas holiday, and the event was really for the entire family, with various activities, a service expo, and several nonprofit agencies on site and ready to provide resources. K-9 section, K-9 Rocks assisted TRT and gang with apprehending a party wanted for a firearm-related offense in the 6300 block of Brookside Plaza. K-9 Rocks also assisted Shoal Creek officers with locating and apprehending a stolen auto suspect in the 4800 block of North Fremont Avenue. The arrest resulted in a felony parole violation warrant and the recovery of numerous stolen packages. K-9 Finn assisted in locating an armed robbery suspect after a vehicle pursuit that ended in the 3900 block of Cleveland. K-9 Finn also assisted in conducting a sweep after a bomb threat in the government district. K-9 Pepper conducted an article search in regard to an armed business robbery and located a firearm that was used during the incident. Here are some year-end totals for our tactical response teams. In 2024, they handled 46 Operation 100s. Those are incidents involving armed and barricaded suspects, compared to 27 in 2023. In 24, they executed 89 search warrants, compared to 70 in 23. In 2024, they made 203 investigative arrests, compared to 97 in 23. And investigative arrests are those that are based on probable cause, but where a warrant has yet to be issued. And as for warrant arrests, they made 372 in 24 compared to 241 in 2023. And finally, recovered firearms. Last year, they recovered 60 firearms compared to 43 in 23. Moving on to response time reports. The median response time for priority 1 calls during the month of December was 8 minutes and 26 seconds. That's a 30-second decrease compared to November. The median response time for priority 2 calls was 10 minutes and 46 seconds. That's a 32-second decrease compared to November. End of the year traffic report. From January 1 to December 31st, the department issued a total of 57,873 traffic violations. That's a 19% increase compared to 2023. In 24, there were a total of 17,618 reported motor vehicle crashes compared to 18,606 in 23. So that's a 5% decrease. And when we look at fatal crashes, we ended the year with 86 fatal crashes with a total of 97 victims. In 2023, there were 90 fatal crashes with a total of 102 victims. So that's a 4% decrease in the number of fatal crashes and a 5% decrease in the number of deaths. In situations where a seatbelt would have been required, 84% of those killed were not wearing a seatbelt. Drugs or alcohol were involved in at least 50% of the fatal accidents, and we're still waiting on toxicology results in several of the cases. KCPD in total made 1,155 DUI arrests in 2024. 887 of those were for city charges, and 338 were submitted for state charges. And finally, the Traffic Division conducted 6 major sideshow enforcement operations during the year. This is in addition to each patrol division's normal response to sideshow events and calls for service. And the results of these 6 large-scale operations are as follows. In total, we partnered with 4 outside agencies. Over 200 department members participated. We deployed Stop 6 134 times, disrupted dozens of sideshow events, issued 171 citations, towed 22 vehicles, recovered 5 firearms, cleared 4 warrants, and recovered 2 stolen autos. And we will be continuing these operations in 2025. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
I think it was during Colonel Niemeyer's report, but you had mentioned a new initiative. I just want to make sure we understand it. It's a new squad that sounds like it's going to be proactive to wherever we're seeing an uptick in whatever type of event.
Correct.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
It'd be similar to our prior impact squads where they have, if a division commander sees an uptick in a particular type of crime, then these officers are proactive. They don't have to answer calls for service, so they can dedicate all their time to combating that issue. But this particular squad will be citywide. So during that meeting that I mentioned on Wednesdays, a Teams meeting, we can collaborate and talk to each other and see who has the most pressing issue and then assign that squad to respond. And they also can respond on prolific criminals, or if someone has a warrant, they really have the freedom and the time to do some of these proactive activities that we want them to do.
What's the duration? Is this a pilot project, or is this in place and?
It's a permanent squad.
Permanent squad,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Great job. Okay, Deputy Chief Ortiz. We've already heard that great news, so thank you and congratulations on that.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. Under tab C, I will provide an update on our staffing levels, recruitment efforts, and our wellness unit. As Chief Graves mentioned, for the first time in 5 years, we achieved an increase in our law enforcement staffing levels. This milestone reflects the efforts of Captain Pinkerton and his team, who significantly streamlined our recruitment and candidate processing for 2024. As of December 31st, 2024, we increased our law enforcement personnel from 1091 to 1097 in 2024. And as previously mentioned, I'm proud to share that 17 police officers or police officer candidates graduated last week, increasing our law enforcement capacity to 1,113. I want to recognize our academy staff for maintaining the highest standards of training and preparing these officers to serve our community with excellence. Looking ahead, the 184th Academy class is set to begin on January 27th, and as we know, we have 40 police officer candidates confirmed. This group includes 18 candidates recommended by our department members in the police department, 20 through social media and recruitment efforts, and 2 through Indeed, the application or the website, the platform. In addition, we're processing 12 lateral candidates and 1 additional lateral that will also start on January 27th. We'll start the academy on January 27th. For the 85th Academy class, starting on May 5th, we already have 25 candidates in the process. So we're looking forward to that as well. In our communications unit, we hired 2 new members. We're awaiting the response of 3 job offers, and we have 7 candidates in the process. Our overall total number of professional staff members for 2024 was 529, up from 509 from 2023. In 2025, excuse me, we will be more specific in targeting communications personnel by continue building our relationships with high schools, colleges, and universities, partnering with military programs, and increasing our social media presence in platforms such as Indeed and Handshake. Handshake, by the way, is one of those platforms that has access to universities and colleges, and they share that information. Our goal is to be part of that network. Moving on to our recruitment efforts. On January 26th or 25th, we will host our next law enforcement testing with 51 candidates already registered to take the physical agility test. I encourage everyone watching to take this opportunity to join the KCPD team. We're looking forward to meet everyone. And listed above, you can see the other recruitment events that we're going to be hosting. Everyone is welcome to join us. Moving on to some of the projects that we have going on. We're in the final stages of hiring an employee relations manager with an offer anticipated by this Friday. This role will be critical in overseeing employee relations, policy interpretation and applications, and performance management, among other responsibilities. Our internship programs continue to grow and diversify. This week, we welcome five new participants in our new spring internship program, which will go from January to May. In addition, our summer internship program, scheduled from June 2nd to July 25th, already has 14 participants registered. We also offer a specialized crime scene investigations laboratory internship, running from the same dates, June 2nd to July 25th, and that one already has 7 applicants, and we're looking to see all these internships coming into our program. We're looking forward to meeting them. These programs provide invaluable experiences for those interested in law enforcement careers, and I encourage anyone interested to please visit kcpd.org/careers to join us. We are also advancing in our 2025 Sergeant's promotional process. Last Saturday, 30 candidates participated in training in preparation for the Assessment Center, which is scheduled for February 2nd through the 6th. We anticipate finalizing the promotional list by February 7th. I want to thank the entire Human Resources Division, Major Smith, Renee, Tania, Ruth, Mindy, and many others, for their hard work in making this project and many other projects that we have going on a successful one. Lastly, I would like to highlight the efforts of our wellness unit. Between December 15th and January 8th, the wellness team conducted 106 contacts with members. They also facilitated 2 critical incident debriefs. I also want to express my gratitude to our chaplains who continue to provide 24/7 support for our members and their families during their challenging times. In closing, I urge everyone to participate in our upcoming recruitment events and explore the opportunities available within our department. As a reminder, we will be at 1740 Paseo at the Full Employment Council tomorrow from 1 p.m. or 11 p.m. to 3 p.m. 1 p.m., to 3 p.m. For further information, please visit kcpd.org/careers. I'm open to any questions. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a question, Deputy Chief. Tell us more about the Employee Relations Manager.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a new position? Is it backfilling a former position? What do you aim to accomplish with that role? I think if there's someone here who can speak to that, or.
The Employee Relations Manager is a new position for the police department. It encompasses a series of roles that were held by the Employee Benefits Unit Commander, previous HR directors and HR managers. And what it's meant to do is to concentrate primarily on employee relations issues. So they look at internal complaints, harassment, discrimination, retaliation, policies, EEO compliance, and training for the department. So the goal is to have a management position that is becoming more granular in those processes so that they're part of the discipline process, they're part of the performance management process, and they're ensuring that we're meeting the best standards for a public organization and a police department.
And the new person starts, when is that? I'm sorry.
We hope to make the job offer on Friday. They'll have to go
Okay.
through the same kind
Sure.
of background process that any of our other employees do, but we're pretty confident. We've had some real good candidates that we're looking at.
Just a quick follow-up. I remember at a past meeting, I think it was Chief that shared that we were looking for, is 1 or 2 possible more HR professionals in. Is this one of those 2, or is there more coming, or?
It's one of the 2. You want to discuss the HR director? Before you do that, I'm sorry, I keyed you up. So when I was putting in for chief of police, I was the major in the human resources division.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. So I've been the employee, up until recently, I was the employee benefits unit commander. I held that position for about 3.5 years. So I'm kind of been entrusted with a transition as we move to professionalize some of these managerial and director positions. So the employee relations manager is one of those first steps into making that transition. And to your point, to the chief's point, we'll be looking to add a human resources director. And then really my goal is to help onboard that person, ensure that they have the right connections within the organization, and we get them started out in a position to be successful moving forward.
Thank you. I look forward to the success of that.
Yes, thank you. And I know we've been talking about this for years, so kudos on making that happen. Thanks.
One follow-up question, and I agree with all that. I think maintaining culture is so important, and having an employee relations director and another professional in the HR director role, as we grow our forces back to where we need to, that investment will pay off. That's great. My follow-up question, either added or in the pipeline, 12 individuals for communications. What's the number we're trying to get to? What's the delta that we're trying to solve for?
Our numbers that we're trying to get to is 48. I believe we are at 33 right now in communications.
48 dispatchers and 47 call takers is what we're, our goal. We're currently down 13 dispatchers and 12 call takers.
That's what I'm asking. Okay. So we're making progress toward that.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Good work. That's all.
Okay. Executive Service Bureau, Deputy Chief McCollum.
Good morning, Commissioners, and Happy New Year.
Morning.
Item A, or all of your board items are under tab D of your board book for the Executive Services Bureau. Item A, budget transfers for fiscal year 2024-25. I request the following appropriations be transferred within the general fund and police grants fund. The general fund transfer moves $3.23 million within personal services for salaries. The police grants fund transfer moves $155,817 within personal services and $178 within contractual services. The police grants fund transfer adjusts appropriations to where they are needed now compared to when they were estimated in the fall of 2023 as the budget was being put together. Unless you have any questions, I do recommend approval.
Any questions?
Move to approve the transfer.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved.
Item B, adjustment to special revenue accounts for fiscal year 2024-25. The department anticipates receiving $647,000 donation from the Police Foundation of Kansas City to purchase the new Peregrine software the board approved last month. Therefore, it is requested that $647,000 be appropriated from the unappropriated fund balance of the Special Services Fund to fund this program. Unless you have any questions, I recommend approval.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved.
Well, I feel like Deputy Chief Young because I'm finished. Unless you have any questions, I will hand it
Wow,
over
that
to
was
him.
short.
Yes,
Jeez,
that
okay.
was great. Wish every month could be like this.
Deputy Chief Young.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Good morning.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion's approved. Okay, that was too easy. Okay, Office of General Counsel.
I'll try to be equally expeditious. Good morning, Commissioners. I have one action item for you, and it's under tab F in your board book. John D. Powell has appealed the revocation of his armed private security officer license. On November 5th, 2024, while working as a private security officer, Powell pointed his weapon at individuals in a vehicle. Powell's account of events did not match his body cam footage. Powell's license is subject to revocation pursuant to the Code of State Regulations, 17 CSR 10-2.060-2H. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, the private officer licensing unit recommends denying this appeal and upholding the revocation of Powell's license.
Any questions on this?
I move to support the recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion's approved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Office of Community Complaints. Merrill, I know you said. Okay, thank you. Public comments.
Yes, the first one is Mary Faith White. You'll have 2 minutes. Okay. Then Ron Hunt.
Morning.
To the board president. You look so beautiful up there as always, Ms. Kramer and Ms. Romeo. Good morning to the board president, chief, your staff, men and women, my friends and men and women. My dad, I discovered 2 months ago, my dad was the first African-American traffic control officer, something like that, Stacey, is that it? Yeah, first, and that kind of amazed me, because I always wondered, why do I come to the police board meeting all the time? What is the connection here? But my uncle and my cousin, I'm from California, and pray for the people in California. My uncle's home was burned in Altadena, but he was the sheriff of Orange County. And my cousin, currently Jeffrey Childs, is the sheriff of Orange County as I speak. I wanted to just say something about prolific offenders. That captured me, you know, when you say prolific offenders. And I appreciate, Nehemiah, your work that your team is doing. That arrest rate, 76%, that's huge. That's huge. That shows that you guys are working, and I always appreciate you guys, but I have some that's heavy on my heart, and I'm going to discuss it later on with other people, but family, if you can remember integrity, what would somebody say to you individually? Do you have integrity? And that goes a long ways, and integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's integrity. Over the years, every day of my life, I changes my life because of my relationship with members of the police department, with judges, my kids. I changed my life, and I try to do the right thing. And when I'm out shopping, I'll give you an example. I was at Price Choppers, real quick. I was at Price Choppers, and I caught somebody stealing. And I said to the individual, you know, I didn't go get the manager, nobody. I said, hey, when you take from this store, it costs me and everybody else, you know, lots of money. And people will give to you. To say all that to say this, if you know anybody, you working with anybody that's doing something unethical, tell somebody. Don't keep that to yourself because it makes you all look bad. And you have a lot of power, the board. You officers have a lot of power and a lot of influence. Use it for good. Use it for good. I mean, because we look at you as a community, we depend on you to get the bad guys off the street. Lock these people up. You talk about prolific offenders. Are there any in the police department that's a prolific offender? And you gotta be honest with yourself. Let's be honest with ourselves. We gotta clean some of this up. I commend 95% of the people on the police force does great job. You do a great, great job, but there's 5%. We need to address that. And we can't fool ourselves. You have a badge. You're in authority. Use it the way God intended for you to use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else, David?
No, that's it.
Approval of open session minutes.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. David?
I have nothing at this time.
Mayor's not here. Commissioner Romius?
Nothing at this time?
Commissioner Whitaker?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Well, I just want to say Happy New Year's and continue the good work to everybody, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Move to go into closed session.
Second?
Whitaker, aye.
Romius, aye.
Kramer, aye.